In April of 1933, FDR planned a heist. His crew, the entire bureaucracy of the federal government. His target, you, or more specifically, your great-grandfather. What was he stealing? Nothing much. Just a little thing called all the gold in America. Unlike your regular thief, FDR didn't bother with guns or bombs. He had them, but he didn't need them. He had a sneakier weapon, the pen. On the 5th of April, 1933, FDR signed this piece of paper, Executive Order 6102. The order was pretty simple. All citizens and residents of the United States were given 25 days to surrender all their gold to the government or go to jail. Citizens were only allowed to retain gold coins worth $100 or less. Jewelry could contain no more than 5 ounces of physical gold. Everything else belonged to the government. Why, you may ask? Because the government said so. My philosophy professor might call this circular reasoning, but FDR wasn't playing around. Failure to comply with Order 6102 carried a fine of $10,000. That will be $200,000 in modern dollars. There was also a jail term that could be as long as 10 years. 10 years in the slammer for not giving the government your gold. Imagine that. FDR and his economic advisors said it was all for the greater good. Ego, a thirst for adoration, and the desire to generate encouraging statistics for the 1934 midterms had absolutely nothing to do with it. How can you even think that? Everyone knows politicians are honest and selfless. FDR didn't have a savior complex. That is the reason he expanded the power of the presidency more than any other president in history. He also served as president for only 4 terms, longer than anybody else. Long live the king. The president. And before you start commenting about how gold owners were compensated, yes, they were. The government forced Americans to sell their gold at $20.67 an ounce. Once the feds had all the gold, they turned around and nearly doubled the price to $35 an ounce. This netted them a cool $2.8 billion in profits. Adjusted for inflation, that is $61 billion in today's money. All it took was one signature and a few threats. FDR's heist created cracks in America's gold standard. For you non-economic nerds out there, the gold standard simply meant that every dollar was backed by gold. If the government had $1 billion in gold, it could only print $1 billion in cash. There was no such thing as printing money out of thin air and then using it to bail out your banker friends or to bribe voters so they can re-elect you. You had to acquire the gold before you could print the cash. But there are 2 problems with assuming America was on the gold standard in 1933. First, the government set the price of gold, so gold sold for pretty much whatever the government wanted. As long as it wasn't too out of sync with international gold prices, no one would complain too much. For example, if the feds had gold worth $1 billion, but wanted to print dollar bills worth $2 billion, they could just declare that the gold they had was worth $2 billion and print all the cash they wanted. This is exactly what FDR did. He raised the value of gold so he could print more money. This system also works under the assumption that the government isn't lying about how much gold it actually has in the first place. The government will never lie about the size of its gold reserves, right? Right? It's not like the government has lied about anything else. The second problem is that the government simultaneously made it illegal for private citizens to own physical gold. Before FDR's executive order, you could take a $20 bill to the bank and get an ounce of gold in exchange. But after the government made it illegal to own gold, the $20 bill was all you had. The money was no longer backed by anything other than a government decree. So, was America really on the gold standard if citizens couldn't exchange their dollars for gold? Was every dollar in circulation truly backed by gold? Or were politicians playing their usual games? These games usually involve coming up with a short-term band-aid to a serious problem. The unsustainable results of this band-aid are then used to massage statistics and generate favorable economic indicators that politicians can then use as talking points on their re-election campaigns. Like all of FDR's economic policies, the gold heist failed to end the Great Depression. The Depression continued well into the late 1930s. The American economy didn't fully recover until a certain Austrian painter did what Austrians do best: drag Germany into an unwinnable war. Next time, we will explore how this failed painter succeeded in saving the American economy. Spoiler alert, he did not do it on purpose. The only good thing this guy ever did on purpose was killing Hitler. On a hopeful note, the private ownership of gold was legalized again in 1974. But the government still retains the right to seize your gold whenever it decides there is a strong enough emergency to justify that theft. The moral of the story is that you too can get away with robbing an entire nation of its gold as long as you sign a piece of paper saying it's legal. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and do all that other stuff.